Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin our webinar in a couple of minutes' time. We're just waiting for everyone to settle into the room. If you need to grab your favorite beverage, take some time to do that, and we will be with you shortly. Hello, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to our webinar. As we begin tonight, you'll see there are two QR codes on the screen. If you haven't had a chance to follow us or keep in touch with us, this is where you can begin. Now, as we get started, we just want to, let you know some of the things that have been going on with us at the Reframe Project to kickstart things. One of the contents that we came up with was to actually go out on the street and ask people what they know about burnout. So before we get started, we'll just show you a little bit of a sneak peek of what we've been up to. So let's take a look.
I think all parents do.
Yeah, I do actually. When I don't feel like going to work, or when I wake up and I feel very exhausted, I think
Bila saya rasa malas nak buat assignment, rasa saya macam tangguh sampai nak dekat deadline tu.
No, I would say I wouldn't get enough sleep and maybe too much driving around.
So burnout results from chronic interpersonal job stress. Key dimensions are exhaustion, a sense of ineffectiveness, and low motivation. So how do you usually deal with burnout?
I usually talk to my partner, or usually I try to spend 1 day a week to see her.
Macam kalau saya rasa penat, saya akan try untuk get tidur yang lebih berkualiti lah.
I do try to make time, make sure I'm in good health.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. You notice that we've left you a little bit of a cliffhanger because that's how, media and content works these days. If you'd like to keep in touch, find out more about how this conversation went, please do keep in touch with us on our socials. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the next slide. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our mental health webinar. Let's talk about burnout. I think living in this time, in this day and age that is so fast-paced, you can almost guarantee that burnout is such a universal word. So many of us have heard it, might have experienced it. And tonight we're here to talk about it. to see how we can approach it from a mental health perspective. My name is Ethan. I am your host and moderator for today. Now, whenever we begin a webinar, it's never quite fully welcomed until we have someone to officially welcome us. Now, to do that, we have our founder. She's a clinical psychologist with plenty of experience working in the social space and working in the corporate space, but she insists that I humbly introduce her as just Shaswini. So can we please invite our founder, Shaswini? Can you please welcome us officially to our webinar?
Thank you, Ethan. Next. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Reframe Project, I would like to extend my warm welcome to all attendees and panelists. Thank you for taking your time to join us this wonderful evening, and we really appreciate your presence. So a bit background about the Reframe Project is that it consists of a group of people who are passionate about psychology and mental health. And in fact, we come from various fields like clinical psychology, counseling, marketing, economics, and we hope to increase the awareness of mental health by creating digestible content like webinars while reframing narratives. So we conduct webinars to provide space for the public like you to engage with mental health experts. And in order to achieve our vision, we have actually curated webinars in English and Malay language to engage a larger Malaysian audience. And because of this, we have actually been able to reach out to population in every state of Malaysia. Next. So some of the past webinars that we have organized include differences between counselors, clinical psychologists, and psychiatrists, decriminalizing suicide, men's mental health, and even a webinar on mental health issue at school, like 𝗃𝐄𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐲𝐶𝐵 issue kesihatan mental di sekolah. So fret not if you have missed it, because all of the recordings are actually available on our Facebook and YouTube page. Next. So now here we are with our 10th webinar, and I'd like to show my appreciation to my team, in fact, who has worked hard for this webinar despite having our own careers. And a number of us have completed our masters, and we're now clinical psychologists, counselors, auditor, work in the marketing field. Nelissa, who is our speaker for today, also co-organized this webinar, in fact. Ethan, who is our amazing and talented moderator. Daryl, who is the person who has been sending the emails and handling Zoom even for today. The content team, 𝗲𝗎𝐻𝐻 and Anis, who have done a great job with producing bite-sized video. The reel that you saw earlier, it was actually produced by them to ensure that information can be easily understood. Lastly, our fantastic designer, Kyra, who has been designing all the promotional materials. My deepest gratitude to all of you. Next. I would also like to thank MCCHR for supporting our events. They have been graciously providing us their Zoom account to host all our webinars. Thank you so much for your continued support in helping us bring events like this to the public. Without all their contributions, we would not be able to have this webinar. And speaking of our webinar today, actually, I'd like to touch upon on how this webinar actually came about. So through the discussions, our team noticed that there were actually not enough awareness, conversations surrounding burnout, and even just how to manage it. We felt that we needed this webinar to happen to explore more on this topic and to also bring light to this topic as well. And in fact, here are some reasons that people have submitted on why they want to attend this webinar. Increase knowledge, learn to cope with burnout. Some even say that this is important personally, and the information acquired hopefully can benefit other women in the society. Some even are looking for technique to deal with themselves and how to face challenges. One even mentioned that he or she wants to help staff to avoid burnout. So what really touches me is that people are not just joining to understand themselves about how to deal with burnout, manage with burnout, but it's also to help the community that they are in. So we, the Reframe Project, once again, thank all of you here for coming, and we hope that you'll find the webinar beneficial. And if you do, please do share it. And happy learning. Let's reframe the perception of mental health together. Thank you, and back to you, Ethan.
All right, thank you so much, Shas. I think that's very warm and touches on the fact that many of us here have either had some form of experience or want to help someone who may be going through something like this. Thank you, Shaz, for setting the stage for us. Now, let's continue on. Shall we move on to the next slide? So for us to get started tonight, we'll begin how we usually begin. We want to understand what are you going through? What is our audience thinking about when it comes to burnout? So to do that, we have a little bit of a poll so that we can understand each other better and start off the foot a little bit more aligned. So let's begin. By the way, our logistics, our person in charge, his name is Daryl. So if you hear me talking to a Daryl, don't worry. If any of you are named Daryl, it's not you. So Daryl, can I get your help to pull up the poll for us? Can you show us our first question? So our first question is, have you ever experienced burnout? So let us know, what's your experience been with our topic today? Okay, and I see our numbers are coming in very, very quickly. It seems the force of responding is strong with our participants. Okay, wow, fantastic. Okay. All right. Okay, I'll give it a couple more seconds if you're still deciding what your experience has been. All right, and let's reveal the answers. Could you close the poll and let us know? Okay, so it seems that many of our attendees have experienced it, are currently experiencing, or have experienced this phenomenon. And we also see some people who are new to the phenomenon of burnout. All right, let's move on to the next poll, Daryl. All right, so the next question, what do you believe is the primary cause of burnout in your life? So take some time to let us know what you think are the main causes, from whether it's this excessive workload, lack of support, the emotional exhaustion, lack of control, or the unrealistic expectations. Let us hear from you. What do you think is contributing? All right. Wow, the speed of the answers coming in, it seems as though everyone here has really reflected on their experience and their causes before coming in. Okay, let's give it a couple more seconds to get some more answers in. Going once, going twice, going, and let's close the poll and share the results. Okay, it seems like across the board, everybody has a significant cause or a significant contributor. And it seems like the biggest one is the excessive workload or responsibilities, followed by the emotional exhaustion or chronic stress. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing what's been on your mind. Now let's move on to the third poll. Okay, how are you currently addressing burnout in your life? Let us know whether it's professional help, self-care, talking to friends, or whether you don't have those specific measures in place, or whether you're not even sure just yet. Okay. All right. Okay, fantastic. The numbers are coming in. Okay, let's give it a few more seconds. All right, and let us close the poll and share the results. Okay, so it seems most of us here practice self-care as our main way to address it. We have some who are willing to and able to share with friends and family, and a significant proportion that also goes to therapy or counseling. And for those of you who don't have any measures yet or not really too sure, we hope that by the end of tonight, there is something in your mind about what we can do for ourselves. All right, let's move on to our final poll. All right, so our final poll, of course, everybody is here for this topic, but let's get an understanding. How many of you at the moment feel that burnout is a valid mental health concern? Whether it's a definite yes or no, or you're still trying to figure out what burnout is about. Okay. Okay. Wow, even more people are answering even faster. Fantastic. Okay. Let's give it a couple more seconds. All right, it's going once, going twice, and let's close the poll and share the results. All right, that's our final poll. And it seems like, speaking on this topic, a good almost 90% feel that this is a valid concern. Some are still on the fence, not too sure, and some don't feel that's the case. And I think ultimately that's why we're here. We're here to explore why burnout plays a role, how it plays a role, and what are the aspects of it that really make an impact. So thank you all for participating in our poll. And now that we're all aligned, it's time to get things started. Okay, so let's close that poll. Okay, so today we have two wonderful speakers joining us, and allow me to introduce them. Can we get our first speaker slide up on the screen? Okay, so our first speaker for today goes by Asha. She is a registered counselor with over a decade's worth of experience, spanning a wide range of populations. She's worked with adults, and of course, families, and she's worked in many workshops, and she does a lot of work with individuals needing support in mental health sphere. And she is our expert opinion for today. So Asha is here. Asha, can you do a little wave for us? Let us know your Rogering. All right, fantastic.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Hello.
So accompanying Asha, our next panelist for tonight is Nelissa. So Puteri Nelissa, she works as an auditor at the moment, which is, I believe, an industry that has quite a high experience with burnout. And she is here tonight speaking as someone who has experience with this. So tonight we have a panel who has two sides of the burnout extreme, or both sides of the coin. And we're here to have a conversation about that. So without further ado, let's get the slides down and get started. Okay, so let's begin very simply. Asha, Nelissa, could you please tell us a little bit about what you do professionally, and how do you connect? How does that connect with our topic of burnout today? Whoever would like to take the first shot.
All right. I can go first. So yeah, good evening to everyone. So yeah, Asha here, and I'm actually a registered counselor. Been in this field for 13 years to be exact. So started my journey as a counselor in hospital, and then I was in educational institution. I am working in an organization. So if you ask me who population so I work, I mean, just bring anyone.
Oops,
Now.
Asha, so sorry. I think you're breaking up. We can't really hear you at the moment. No worries. Could I give you a little bit
My
of time
knowledge.
to? Yeah, so it seems the internet connection has done the work for us to align in terms of the lag. I think that's the reality of the burnout experience, right? Sometimes you don't know when these things are going to kick in. Okay, Asha, while we let you figure out the connection part, Melissa, can we hear from you? Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how it connects to burnout?
Hi, firstly, thank you, the Reframe Project, for having me here. My name is Nelissa, and I'm currently working as an internal auditor, specializing in investment banking. So the reason why I had decided to participate this webinar, currently as a panelist, is because to share my experience, because I myself have experienced burnout when I was in the final year of my master's undertaking. So at that time, from 9 to 6, I was an auditor. Then 6 to 9, I was a student. So after experiencing burnout for several months, I had help from my family and friends. So that's why I came in here today to share on how I overcome burnout.
Thanks for joining us, Nelissa. I think that's a perspective that we really need, right? We always need to have, of course, those who are working on it, but those who have had experience interacting with it. I see Asha is back. Asha, I see you moving in real time. So sorry to get you to repeat it for us. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do? The last we caught is you've been in this industry for 13 years and you started working in the hospital line. can you tell us again, so what do you do and how does that link to
Okay.
our topic today?
Sure, no problem. I mean, yes, thanks to the connection, because yeah, that's one of our tester, whether are we able to handle that stress. Okay, so yeah, I began in a hospital and then I worked with education institution. So now I am with an organization. So I work with children until the older generation. So how I would link this topic with whatever that I'm going to share whatever that I'm going to share is I have dealt and I'm also dealing with lots of people who are experiencing burnout. So I think this is just a great moment to actually share not only my knowledge, but also my experience helping and dealing with people who experience burnout. So I think, yeah, it's great going. So thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Asha. Not a lag in sight in terms of content and in terms of video. So thank you for doing this for us. So to the audience out there, I know you must be excited to ask questions. Do note that there's a little Q&A panel down there. You can access that. Leave your questions there. So don't leave them in the chat, leave them in the Q&A. If you're on Facebook Live, don't worry, we will collect your answers from there and we will get to you. So we'll start by having a little panel discussion about this topic. And then after some time, we will go into the Q&A section where we will go through your questions. So let's begin with the topic itself. So Asha and Nelissa, maybe I'll start. Asha, could you tell us, how would you define what burnout is as a concept and what does it mean to us these days?
All right, I think, all right, to begin with, I think sometimes we may misconstruct what's a burnout and what's a stress. But since you are focusing on burnout for now, so let me share. Burnout, it's more to an extreme stress or a chronic stress that's actually taking a toll in our emotions. So we get emotionally exhausted. Like, I think one of the guy that you all interviewed said something like that, all right? Like emotionally exhausted, okay, and then not feeling like going to work. Well, in these days, that's what I think most people will be experiencing. For example, they know they love their job, but out of sudden, they just feel like, you know what, I just don't like what I'm doing. And sometimes they tend to question about themselves. Am I doing good enough in this work? All right, they feel so overloaded and they just feel like they are not performing like how they may have done before. So yeah, something like they feel very much hopeless in what they are doing, what they are feeling. So that's more like to the emotion part. If you want me to give a very funny example, I would say your tire, yeah, your car tire or bike tire, it's losing the air, right? Now it's more like it's punctured. Okay, so yeah, something like that.
Right. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's a very intense form of this exhaustion, despite, and it comes from a place that's a little bit confusing, despite knowing you love your work or like your work, you just don't seem to have the energy. It feels like, as we say, what, tire punch it, a totally burst tire. All right. And Nelissa, I'm also curious to know from your experiences, what is your perception of burnout? I think having gone through it as well, what did you think burnout was before you went through it, and how do you feel about it now?
Okay, firstly, thanks, Ethan, for the question. So previously, I understood burnout as a mental exhaustion caused by like excessive or like prolonged stress. Like, for example, in a high pressure environment, such as in the workplace, some individuals may feel like overwhelmed, drained, or unable to meet the demands placed upon them. However, after I experienced it myself, having went through that like real and tangible experience, it doesn't only affect one area of my life, but all areas of my life. You know, the feeling of exhaustion, being cynical, being like having this couldn't care less state. So I would say that characterize my burnout. It's more than just a phrase or a words on a page, but it really consumes a lot of parts in my life.
Right. So, I think it's pretty funny how much you were able to talk about, mental exhaustion and so on, but going through the experience, I'm hearing that there is a lot of that depletion, the consuming nature of burnout, and how it eventually eats into other areas. So thanks for giving us that contrast, going a little bit deeper for us to understand more about burnout. Like we talked about, obviously the experience can be pretty big. If we were to speak to Asha, if we were to ask you, could you give us a little bit more about what are the basic signs of burnout and what are the symptoms that we would define professionally? How do we know we're burnt out?
All right, so you can understand the symptoms or the signs of burnout perhaps in three categories, I would say. So let's talk about the emotional part, all right? So one will feel very drained, all right, because they just don't feel like doing something that they enjoy doing. So they feel so drained emotionally. And sometimes it's more like, you know what, I just do not want to do it, that kind of feeling. And this is not only in terms of work. Sometimes, like how Nell said, all right, it does impact the other area of life. Okay, so one feel very negative about themselves. They tend to question about their worth in whatever that they are doing. And then when it comes to their thoughts, all right, okay, they tend to think negatively. All right, so they can be very cynical, like what Nell said, or they can be their biggest critic. All right, and what happens is perhaps, when one question like, hey, you performed very well the last time, so what's happening now? We tend to take it so seriously, and we tend to think that, we are just the worst and not doing good enough. All right, so we tend to question a lot about ourselves. And of course, when it comes to behavior, to some, perhaps they may try to have this unhealthy escapism. Perhaps some may into substance, or some may just binge a lot, or they want to sleep, or they do not want to sleep at all. So you see, these are some of the signs. I mean, physical wise also, all right, it affects our body. For example, some people may experience headache and
It seems Asha has taken a long pause for impact. All right. So what we're
this is
hearing...
actually serious, in which lately most of my clients who have experienced...
Sorry, Asha, we lost you for a quick moment. You said
All right.
burnout can even get physical, and that it leads
Yes.
to even headaches. So could you
Yes.
please connect it for us?
Sure. Yeah, the headaches, all right, because one might be overthinking, or they might be just too tensed about it, all right, because it increases the blood pressure. All right. Also, I think the worst case scenario that is happening lately, which my clients are sharing, how this high level of burnout actually has caused them a very chronic illness. For example, I think about 3 of my clients, and these are the females, all right, they have experienced surgery, a very major surgery, removing tumors from their body. All right, even for the females, sometimes they may experience PCOS too. So even men do go through, certain level of bad signs when it comes to burnout. But then this is really affecting one's health very badly, especially physically and mentally. So I'm just glad that you all choose to, address this issue.
Right. So I'm hearing when you look at burnout, you kind of look at it from the emotional standpoint. How are they feeling about it? Very self-critical, so on and so forth. Then there's also the behaviors, like not really feeling able to do something. So the changes in behaviors, and then also even physical signs, things like increased blood pressure. So you can see, and I guess that ties back to what Nelissa said, like that feeling of it's pervading into other spaces. And, tying what you said, Nelissa, when you were going through your experience, were there any particular causes that you could kind of see led to this burnout? And if there were any in your work environment?
Okay, so I would say that the moment I started to come into terms that I was experiencing burnout, I had 2 key telltale signs that I was experiencing burnout. First, I had this mentality where I couldn't care about the things I used to care about, be it work or studies. And that's a lot coming from someone who loves to do what she does and who loves studying. So the other telltale signs, I would say that this is a feedback I got from my family and friends, saying something along the lines that you're not your usual self. And I took that comment personally and I took it to heart. So that's one of the key signs that I was experiencing burnout. And it was frustrating because at that time I knew I was mentally exhausted, but I didn't know how to overcome it.
Right. And you were saying earlier, coming to terms with it. When you say coming to terms with the fact that you are going through burnout, what do you mean by that? Could you tell us
Oh
more?
yeah, it's okay. So basically, when I first started to feel these things, I would tell myself that, oh, I'm just tired. I need to take a break. I need to go on vacation. I'm just not feeling well, or I'm just lazy or procrastinated, But this goes on for months. And it's not only changes in terms of physical, but also mental and social. I started to self-isolate and not going on dates or hanging out with my friends and everything because I didn't think at the time I would be a good company to them. So all of this adds up to the burnout symptoms.
Right. And I guess, if I'm getting it right, you said the sentence, people telling you you're not really yourself. Was that the moment when it really clicked that, something's off and I got to figure it out? Do you think?
Yes.
And I see Asha is already getting into the headspace of nodding very therapeutically. Is this something you hear very often, Asha, that people come in when they feel like they're no longer themselves?
Yeah, true. Some are aware that they are experiencing burnout. Like Nell, I mean, she's able to tell you now what she experienced, which is really, really true. All right. That's what some, even they isolate themselves. They just do not want to be with anyone, talk with anyone. Trust me, the one who's experiencing burnout, if you could just give them a room and a blanket and a bed, I think they would just want to sleep and do not want to wake up and face whatever that's happening. It's just a moment where, I do not want to see anyone. I do not want to hear anyone, even though that anyone, anything is something of their favorite. All right. This is for people like Nell who's aware. Now, we do have some people who are not aware about it. So, but then somehow I think that's when the body starts to give you the sign, right? Now, I can share with you a bit of my experience here where, I mean, I enjoy whatever I do. I mean, I'm not talking about counseling. It was something else. So I give all out. I give my heart and soul when I do this particular job. But I didn't know that I was experiencing burnout until my body gave the sign. Just imagine I was eating in a mama restaurant, like for my dinner, and all I felt was a sudden palpitation, and then I feel like I'm gonna fall. And that's when I know, something is not right with her. So what I did, I just went home, didn't tell anyone because I know that people will be worried because people always assume counselor can counsel herself. All right. So what I did, I just slept. I slept the whole day. I didn't go to work the next day. I slept the whole day and I felt good. So that's when I know, okay. So sometimes we are aware about this burnout symptoms. Sometimes we don't, but that's when your body gives you the sign, and that's when we have to be very, very cautious. Yeah. So I totally agree with what Nell said.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating because I guess that is true. Nelissa, it sounds like you had a lot of reflection, a lot of people around to tell you, but I guess, it can show itself in terms of how our body is responding to something. So that's a really helpful catch for us. Now, let's see if we were to take a step back and look at it. If we were looking at someone else, what would we see in someone? Okay, so what I mean by this is typically when we talk about questions like sign and symptoms, we are very introspective. What are all the things that we experience? Oh, I realize I'm not really like myself. What do you think, if you were seeing someone who is burnt out, what are the things an outsider might notice about them, Asha?
Okay, I think it can also depend on our level of connection with the person. You see, like when it's your loved ones, and then we know that, okay, the way they behave or the way they carry themselves or whatever that they are talking, sometimes we have to watch out on that. So now this one I can generalize, all right? Just watch out on the way the person is talking, all right? Usually people who are burnt out, I mean, if they are trying to say something very critical and then being negative about it, okay, of course we cannot quickly say, oh, I think you're burnt out. Try not to label people, but then hear them out, when they sound negative about it. So we know, okay, something is off with the person. And then like Nell, when her family, her loved ones notice that something is off with her behavior. So we also need to watch out for the behavior. Like maybe we are doing something out of norm, or maybe, for example, let's say the person is very meticulous, very detailed. And here comes constantly the person is making some mistakes, or something is not right with the way they do the work, or with the way they're performing. All right. I think as an employer or colleague or friend or family, I think we should be like, hey, is there anything, that you need help, you want to talk about? I noticed that you're doing like this, or you're talking like that. I'm kind of concerned. So bring it up like this, instead of just quickly, assume something is totally wrong with them, because then people can become defensive. Because I think even if you ask Nell, when her family said that is something, I mean, if I have to rephrase what you said, like something is off with you, I'm sure that she'd be like taken aback. Something is wrong. So yeah, we have to be cautious in that lah.
Right. When you say cautious in that, do you mean like we don't approach it too like certainly? So I'm hearing you're giving examples of like just checking in and so on.
Yeah.
Nelissa, just out of sheer curiosity, because you're talking about people giving you observations. Was there any particular check-in that you found was like really, really helpful or really meaningful to you when somebody checked in with you?
I would say at the time, my family and friends would check in on me because, like Asha mentioned just now, it's not just mental, it's physical and social as well. And when I didn't start to show up on, outings or sleep in bed all day and things like that, family and friends have been checking in, and I found that very helpful. But it's also slightly difficult to share with other people because burnout is something that we cannot see in the naked eye, right? And we cannot actually pinpoint what's causing us to burn out. Because if, like, for example, stress, maybe it's work, maybe it's a relationship or something else. But then burnout, it's more of a comprehensive where it affects all areas of life. It's not just like one section or several sections.
Right. So speaking of what you just shared with us, in terms of people checking in and whatnot, I think one segment that we want to move to as well is this. I actually wrote it down here as a note. Sometimes, people do say, and I'm pretty sure many of us in the audience have experienced this, something like, it's just stress. This person is just bad at stress management. And, let's talk more about the differences between stress, burnout, and other conditions. So, Nelissa, if you were to explain very frankly from your story, I know although we don't know enough yet, I already get this vibe that you're used to stress. So I want to know from your personal like lived experience, what would you say is that line for you between stress and burnout?
Okay. So I would like to share this part, like, because I think I can relate to this well. Okay. So I disagree when someone says that, if you're burnout, then you just bad at managing stress, because they may overlook the deeper issue of burnout, because stress management involves techniques or strategies to cope with the stressor. Like, for example, you have to have a good time management, or you need some relaxation exercise, or you need to have seek social support, things like that. But then burnout, it's a result of chronic or prolonged stress because it's not managed over time. That's why you burn out. So it affects you on a deeper level, I would say. It's a sense of depletion instead of sense of pressure, which is caused by stress. So that's why from burnout, we can see someone being cynical, someone detached from the things we used to enjoy, or like reduced productivity, like Asha said, or like even physical symptoms like headaches or insomnia. So I would say that stress management techniques is valuable for addressing challenges and other stresses, but then burnout requires more comprehensive techniques, such as taking care of yourself and communicating this to your loved ones.
Right. So I caught that line that you said where it's, it's a long-term thing. It's a chronic stress over time that has not been, for whatever reason, been managed, that can lead to to burnout itself. If you don't mind sharing with us a little bit more, because as a person in your role or your kind of role, I assume stress is so common. Were there some contributing factors that made it especially hard to manage that stress that led to the burnout?
Okay. So basically, working as an auditor, the stress is always there. It's well known among the society. So what led to burnout was a mixture of being a full-time student and also a full-time auditor. So most of my times are allocated for either studies or work, or doing assignments or studying for tests. So there was not like much time that I allocated for myself, taking care of myself. And after I experienced burnout for some time, that I consulted with my family and friends and everything, that we decided to schedule on breaks, to to take a step back, to have some boundaries. And yeah, I would say that taking care of myself was the most the most helpful technique lah out of all at the time.
Right, right. I think that's such a wonderful sharing, because you were taking on a lot. You were already doing a job that is constantly stressful, and then you were studying at the same time. And you were sharing that, yes, it is a time management thing, but I'm hearing that you left out the time for yourself. And I think that's a point that we'll be exploring soon. So before I start a life journey with you and start your biography, Asha, from your side of things, oftentimes we hear that there's stress, there's burnout, there's depression. Could you help us understand the difference between, let's say, stress, depression, burnout?
All right, sure. So stress is more to like okay, how we immediately respond to the challenges or the demand that's happening. For example, like let's say your boss comes to you and say that, hey, this is the additional work for today. So obviously, I strongly believe none of us is going to be happy about it unless you really want to do. All right. So unless your boss said, I'm going to give you an extra 1,000 for that day. All right. Anyway, jokes apart. So yeah, it's an immediate body response to the challenges or the demand that takes place. All right. And of course, stress, we can, I mean, of course, there is the positive one and the negative one. And usually stress, we are able to embrace it. I know that people always say stress management, anger management, but then I would like to beg to differ, because I want to use the word embrace, because we are going to embrace it and accept it and deal with it. However, let's say the stress is not being paid attention to. All right, it's being continued. We just let it to continue. So that will actually develop to anxiety. All right, that's when a continuous stress that we are not working on, it develops into anxiety for some period of time. So that's when, people become, they say that I'm overthinking, or I'm being too anxious, or I get panic, and then, I cannot focus. I get so stressed even when somebody just banged the table. All right. So people become anxious, like they need to get the work done, or they need to get certain things done. All right. And now let's say that anxiety, it's not being paid attention to. Obviously, in a long run, it will lead to burnout. And that's why, like Nell said, burnout, it's actually the prolonged stress, because we didn't pay attention to it. We didn't address it. And it's the chronic one, because we didn't deal with it. We just, let it be. I need to stay focused and do my stuff. I just want to keep running. You just keep running. Like I say, you keep driving, you check your tire punya angin, and then it gets punctured. All right. So the worst case scenario, what happens is when the burnout, it's not being addressed either. So for whatever symptoms and signs we experience, all right, when we feel like, when it comes to burnout, we are already emotionally disconnected with the work and with our personal life, like not finding it interesting anymore. I just don't want to do it, even though it's something that you like. You just feel like, what, I just do not want to go to work and get it done. Or we don't feel like we want to talk to anyone, even when people come and check on us. Of course, one way or another, we really want it, but then we just feel like, you know what, just don't ask me anything. The more you ask me, the more I feel stressed. Like, am I burdening you or causing you trouble? All right. So what happens when people just keep it to themselves without addressing in a long run? That's when people start to feel, I'm useless, I feel empty, there's no one who understands. All right. So I think the worst case scenario will be, unfortunately, self-harm, which of course, before that, it's the depression part. Again, if it's not being highlighted, again, the last worst case scenario will be the self-harm part. So this is actually how it starts with stress and then it ends as such. Yeah.
Right. So just summarizing it, the progression or the way things tend to move, it's that stress in the moment, dealing with the issues, the work, so on and so forth. And then a sense of anxiousness or worry that continues for a long time. And then you find yourself burnt out, unable to really engage in your work, the exhaustion. And then when that goes on for too long, there can potentially start to be these feelings of uselessness, I'm no longer good. And then stretch that even longer, it's possible to fall into things like depression. And I'm getting the sense that burnout is really one of those stages where things have gone on too long. And it's kind of that midpoint before things get pretty significantly more extreme. But a key thing that I think both of you have shared is the not paid attention to, whether it's not us not paying attention to ourselves or not paying attention to the struggle. So speaking of how can we address that? How can we pay attention more effectively? I think, Nelissa, you started that just now. Could you tell us, what do you think was most helpful to you when you were going through burnout? So let me get you in the headspace. You've just been told, Nelissa, you're not really yourself these days. And you go, oh, shucks, I'm going to acknowledge this. So I'm pretty sure you don't talk that way. But I'm assuming, okay, so you've acknowledged this is something that you're going through, and you are starting to work on that burnout. When you were in that phase, what did you find was most helpful for you?
Okay, first of all, thanks for getting me into the headspace of that burnout phase. So first, and I would like to emphasize on this, what worked for me was to acknowledge that I was experiencing burnout, because it's very easy to say that we're stressed, we're tired, we are lazing around, procrastinated. But this is not something that, oh, I have a lazy weekend and we'll be okay the next week. No, because burnout is something that is prolonged over a period of time. And it's difficult to navigate life, whether it's work, personal, social, when you don't feel like your usual self, right? First, when I came into terms with burnout, I did what almost every Gen Z does: search on TikTok how to overcome burnout. Okay, so after hours, I wouldn't say days lah, hours of scrolling, I would say one of the best practical tips I got on how to manage burnout was that to inform my loved ones of what's going on, because it's very easy for them to see that something is wrong with you, but it's not easy for them to identify whether it's regarding work or regarding your mental health or anything. So it's very crucial to inform your loved ones of what you're experiencing, and to just give them a heads up. And then secondly, a practical tip is that I pull out a piece of paper and started to write down a list of non-negotiables. So in this paper, I would write all the things that I need to do to take care of myself first before I get started with work, studies, or showing up in other parts of my life. So every day I would have this checklist and get it done before I do anything else. Because when you are experiencing burnout, you have this mental state where it's too tiring to care about anything else, to be honest. Like one example of that would be like just substituting milk with coffee. It's easier, it gets you going and things like that, but then it's not really taking care of yourself. So I think it's really important that, okay, it's easy to say, hey, you have to incorporate self-care things in your daily life. It's easy to say that, but then in terms of implementation, we tend to overlook it.
Okay, I'm hearing it. It kind of went in 3 stages for you, which is the self-acceptance part, then communicating that, like what exactly is happening with your loved ones, and in your case, it's your family, and then starting to think about what are the things that you need to take care of yourself that you will not negotiate on. And um, I am curious about that self-acknowledgement part. I think a lot of people struggle with that area, and many of us struggle with seeing the benefit of it. But it seems that it really helped you to acknowledge it. Can you tell us what did acknowledging it change for you?
For me, it's easier to see things in black and white rather than having it in abstract. So when I started to acknowledge that, okay, it's like when I'm not feeling well. For example, if I have a headache, then I just take the upama or anything. But then when I had burnout, it's easy to say that, oh, I had burnout, so these are the list of things I need to do to get better.
I think that's very funny. It's a very, very good example. I guess if we had the flu or whatnot, and we kept saying, no, I don't have the flu, I don't even think we'd ever reach the doctor or the medicine. So I guess, yeah, physical health, mental health, when we try and draw the parallels, once you acknowledge it, then there can be steps. Without acknowledging it, it's hard to find those steps. Thanks for sharing that with us. I want to go to Asha, but before I do, I think this is interesting phenomenon where people notice that we're burnt out and they want to help, but the help may not be as effective. Were there any moments you experienced where the help was well-intentioned but not as effective?
I would say, yeah, it is true, because burnout is, like Asha mentioned earlier, it's not something that is visible, right? And it's not like flu or a red eye. Someone can just immediately notice and give you treatment or prescription to help with that. So it's a bit more challenging for our loved ones or our friends to help us in that sense. However, in the past, some people reach out to me, to schedule for outing, to schedule for staycations and things like that, just to get away from my normal routine or daily life. However, I found that wasn't really helpful. So I just communicate this to them and tell them that I just need time. I just need to get back on track with taking care of myself and getting my ducks in a row. So yeah, I would say that communicating to other people about just giving me space and time was the most effective way to deal with burnout.
Right. Thanks for sharing that helpful point. I think a lot of us do want to reach out, and I think that's evidenced by the number of people who signed up for this webinar and do want to help. And I think on our part, receiving that help, what we can do, because nobody's perfect in offering help, right? For example, I might really want a staycation now, but I'm burnt out, maybe not, right? So that is a helpful thing that we can do for our loved ones when they're reaching out to us, to communicate what do we need right now. So thanks for giving us that. And, Asha, from your side of things, what have you seen as effective interventions for burnout?
All right. I mean, I can share with you a lot here, but then if you think I am talking a lot, then you can just stop me anytime.
Okay, sorry. Maybe what could be helpful. So Nelissa's experience is, let's say, her figuring it out on that side. As a counselor, you are seeing a client who's come in and said, okay, I've just acknowledged I'm burnout, and now I'm here. I want to work on something. What are some of the ideas that come to your mind, like off the top of your head, one or two things that you might want to use to work with a client who is just starting to work on burnout?
All right, okay. Because all right, the client situation definitely varies, all right? Because I do deal with even the medical officers, and then people of my profession as well, and also people who in the corporate setting. So what I usually tell them, I mean, to answer you very briefly right now, I mean, if I get the chance, I can share a lot, but at this point of time, to answer you, all right, at the point of time where someone is experiencing burnout, the first thing that I will tell them is, of course, the breathing part, because it's either they're venting or with they are just too nervous, too panicky at that point of time. All
Mm.
right. So at that point of time, what I will tell them, okay, you know what, let's do breathing together. So I'm the person, I know that if you go through the Googles, they teach you all different kinds of breathing technique. But for me, at that point of time, I always tell my client to breathe in and to breathe out until they feel at ease a little bit. All right. It's not like immediately going to be fine at that point of time, but at least you feel at ease. And then once they feel at ease, all right, another thing that I used to tell them is two things they can try lah. Number one, if their office or their area is near to the greenery areas, trees or whatsoever, I say just, you know, look at it for like a minute or two. All right. Or lately, I have been educating my clients to do this. And I mean, the feedback that I got from them, they find it helpful at that point of time, in which I said that just go to the washroom and just make yourself like wet. For example, like make your hand wet. All right. Just let the water to pass through you so that you can feel soothed. All right. So just stand there for a while. Don't ask me how long. Just stand there until you feel a bit okay. All right. And then to some, I always advise them, if possible, you can have stress ball with you. So this is space out yourself, breathe, go find anything green, go play with the water or have the stress ball. Once you think you are at ease, now like what Nell said, all right, let's admit that we are experiencing burnout, or if you do not know the term, you can just admit that, okay, something is off, something is not right here right now. All right, so take a break. All right, when I say take a break, at least give yourself a good 5 minutes. All right, stay away from that stressor, some trigger, just space out. All right, so give yourself some break. And then at that point of time, instead of we being worried about the work, whatever that's stressing us, let's focus on ourselves. Okay, what's happening? How am I feeling? Or what's my thought? It's anything, I mean, is my body reacting to something? All right. And then, okay, once you're okay with it, at least you are getting some hint and insights. All right, then you can focus back on the issues that you're experiencing and see how you can, you know, work on whatever issues that you're going through. So this, what I'm sharing, is something that one can immediately implement at that point of time. And after that, of course, there are many other techniques, but this is something that you can do when it's just too much on you, that you can't take it anymore already.
Right. I think that's really crucial. I do think a lot of us, when we first realize that we're burnt out, it's quite a shock. It's very, it can be anxiety inducing to know that this is what you're going through. And I guess a good starting place is, yes, how can we ease ourselves back to ourselves? Whether it's, like you said, you know, what do they call it? Touch grass? see green things, to run our hands, play with water, or even just to ease our breathing. Just a random fun fact, whenever I speak to 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝐏𝐻𝐿, our founder, about the struggles of my life, she usually says, Ethan, do you notice you're breathing too fast? So it's ringing close to home. So I can understand how it can be helpful to slow down. So Asha, you shared earlier that there are lots of other things that someone can do once they're burnt out and so on. Would you mind sharing one of them with us? Like, do you have a favorite that you would say is a place for people to start working on the burnout? So for Nelissa, it's what is my non-negotiables that I need to get in my day? What do you have on your mind, Asha?
Well, I think journaling definitely helped at that point of time. So with the one I shared with you earlier, those are admitting this is what you feel, taking a break and focus on yourself. Once we are at ease, I think we can actually write down, okay, what happened? All right, what made me to feel whatever that I felt? All right, and then how did you respond to it and how you can respond better? This is not something that you have to write daily or you have to write everything at one go. Take your time to dwell on it, to check on it, all right? Because this is our life. So there's no such thing as we have to have a rat race here. And of course, as always, I definitely would encourage people to ask for help, all right? Of course, it's definitely nice to meet a therapist who can listen to you out. But at that point of time, if you think that you really need to speak to someone, please speak to someone who can really understand what we are experiencing and going through. And yeah, I think most importantly, pay attention to ourselves. At that point of time, pay attention to yourself. This is what I always tell my client. You know, sometimes they feel like I shouldn't get angry, I shouldn't cry, you know, I have to be strong, like I shouldn't. Why not, you know, allow yourself to cry at that point of time. It's okay to cry about it. I don't care what gender are you. If you feel like you want to cry, you cry. You want to scream, you scream. Do whatever that you want, I'll tell them. But don't do anything harmful to yourself. All right? If you don't feel like going to work, yeah, just don't go. I know it's easier said than done, but tell you what, I've done it. So that's why I'm sharing it. So if you don't feel like doing the work, if you don't feel like doing anything, then don't do. If you just want to sleep, just sleep. So in a nutshell, what matters the most is listen to yourself and do what you feel like doing at that point of time, as long as not something harmful. Yeah.
Right, right. So I'm hearing that in those moments when things are very intense, we need to really pay attention to what we need. And I get the sense that you're also speaking from a perspective of this is a burnout situation. It feels like a crisis. I have not been paying attention to myself. What do I need right now? And acknowledging that, which means if I need to sleep, I have to sleep. If I need to stop and take a break, I will. And of course, as you suggested right before that as well, it's for us to journal, to take some time to get those acknowledgements out somewhere where we can engage with them. Okay, so I really like how our conversation is talking about that specific segment of burnout, where someone is just beginning on that pathway. And like we talked about, of course, there are many other ways of handling burnout later, whether it's seeing a therapist and planning all these things. I did want to ask you, Asha, as well. I know our audience, plenty of our audience are actually healthcare professionals who are helping, so nurses, so on and so forth. Shout out to our regular nurses who attend. You are also in a helping profession. Could you tell us what is something that is kind of more specific to burnout when it comes to those kinds of jobs? And when you are there, what would you like as a form of help when you're burnt out as a helping profession?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Because to be honest, I genuinely never felt burnout in this profession, but I can tell you where it can lead us, all right? Because we, the helping professionals like nurses, the doctors, all right, counselors, therapists, caregivers, okay? So I think what will cause us to feel emotionally exhausted, I would say, because we are being extremely empathetic towards our clients and patients. Sometimes we have the tendency to buy in their stories or to be in the shoe of their position. So this is when we are dealing with the patients and the clients. You know, sometimes we may even transfer our experience with theirs. So we are extremely empathetic. Sometimes we can even bring that story and share to other people, like, you know what, my patient was da 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 da, or, you know, I mean, again, I think the difficult path will be for us and mental health professional, even like I said, the nurses and all, when something didn't go well with our patients or our clients, I think that would definitely take a big toll on us. We tend to question ourselves, like, did I do good enough? And, you know, was I able to cater their needs? Okay, that's one part of it, when it comes to the patients or the clients. But other than that, since we also have nurses here, and because I also worked with in hospital before, so I know the amount of workload the medical officers and then the nurses experience. I mean, you will have some, sorry to say, some people who are very rude, all right, be it patients or the employers, you know, they can be, you know, like, hey, quick, be fast, you know, you need to hurry, you know, especially in the emergency ward, anything can happen. So at that point of time, I think it would definitely take a toll on us. So yeah, this is what I can share based on experience and based from what I've also observed. Yeah.
Right. So something that's a bit more unique to that setting is, of course, if it's in the medical space, it's the high intensity of the so the physical demands, the speed, maybe the extending the empathy that can lead to that exhaustion as well. Now, of course, going back to that workspace itself, now that we're talking about it, Nelissa, you were working, studying at the same time. During that time, obviously, work is a large part of life. When you were there, was there anything that your management or anything that your colleagues did that you found was helpful in your recovery from burnout?
Okay, firstly, I would just like to have a disclaimer that thankfully I have
Sure.
very supportive bosses and team and management. So generally, people would associate auditors with a highly demanding job, having to work weekends and long working hours, things like that, So it's already a challenging job, so it's difficult to take on masters on top of that. But then in my company, there were multiple of resources made available, like counseling, mental health helplines, and multiple other flexibility in terms of, for example, working hours. Because my work starts at 9, ends at 6, and my class starts at 6, ends at 9. So my bosses granted me the flexibility to get off work slightly earlier to just for me to reach class on time. So even though there were multiple of resources at the company, I didn't utilize these resources because what helped me the most was the strong moral support from my team, from my bosses during that time. So how they helped me was that they delegate the workload, they allocate leave for mental health day, and have weekly check-ins, things like that, just to ask me how I'm doing. But however, for working professionals who's experiencing burnout, I would encourage them to use the resources that they have, whether it's like to attend counseling, to call the helplines and things like that. Because I'm not a mental health professional lah, but Ethan and Asha, you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's no harm in trying out different things to figure out how the best way to treat burnout, because it differs case to case basis.
Right. So that helpful part was, of course, having bosses and colleagues who were more flexible. So as in they made accommodations to what your needs may have been at that time. And when you say moral support, right, could you give us a real quick example of what moral support was for you?
Basically, the team that I work with was really encouraging and really understanding when I had to, sometimes take leave suddenly to attend my classes or to meet my supervisor and things like that, to have revision days and things like that. So they were very understanding and very supportive in that sense.
Right. And I guess, of course, that's one of the challenges that you mentioned, right? If someone doesn't have such a space, then it is to make sure we step in and look for the resources when we can. And speaking of setting up those resources, right? Asha, for yourself, what kind of support programs at the workplace do you think are helpful? And a little bit of a note to that is, what do you think employers need to keep in mind when they're trying to set up these resources?
I think definitely the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, it's very important. I think I'm just grateful because some of the companies the company that I work with, the other companies who are their clients, all right, they are aware that mental health is very important. So I'm happy that most of these companies are providing it, which I think definitely we need to encourage other companies too. All right, so it's very important to have this kind of program. So encourage the employees, even the employers themselves, like everyone does go through stress, right? It's important to actually encourage the employees to meet the counselors, the therapist, all right? This is nothing to do with, hey, go there if you have problem, or if you go there, that means you're a cuckoo. There's no such thing like that. It's more like you need help, you need support, just go and see them, talk to them, get some ideas on what's happening, all right? And I think it's also important, like what Nell said, I think I'm very delighted to know that she's having a team who gives her the good moral support. I think that's definitely very important. When you know that something is not so okay with your employees, I think it's very important for all the employers to hear them out, like to check on them. Hey, so and so, I'm noticing this. Is everything all right? Do you need any help and support? I think when you start to open up that door, I think the employees will feel that I'm not only here to achieve something, to perform something, to get the recognition and the increment, but when I'm having my vulnerability, I'm also being paid attention to. So having EAP program is definitely important, but not only that, I think the employers should give them the opportunity, the channel. And I think another important thing I have to highlight is this, right? I don't think so any employees who are seeking this EAP support to be ridiculed or insulted or to be laughed at. And I think there are some things which has to remain strictly PNC, like you don't talk about it. Hey, you went and see the counselor, whatever, are you having this problem, that problem? So I think we have to be very mindful about that.
Right. So I'm hearing that we're not only, of course, having the employee assistance program, which I guess is having counselors available to the staff, right? I mean, putting it super basically, but also making sure that when we do that, it's a friendly experience. You don't feel shamed for doing it. You feel like it is something that it's completely fine to access. And of course that, we are mindful that people may not want as visible. So not making it super public or an excessively big deal as well. Okay. So in terms of our discussion, I think we've got quite a number of different points out. We've talked about what are some signs and symptoms. We've talked about the things like what are the experiences, the nuances in terms of, how burnout can be very pervasive. We've also talked about things like how to differentiate, the acute stress, the anxiety, depression, and the burnout. Where is burnout's role there? And we've even talked a little bit about what to do if you're currently starting on that path of acknowledging you're burnt out, whether that's acknowledging, setting your non-negotiables, finding ways to ease yourself, whether it's touching grass, or so on and so forth. Now, let's move into a little bit of the Q&A. So we have some questions here. Let me take a quick look. So we've got the most upvoted question on Zoom. So I think the essence of this first question is really, how do we support, people who are going through burnout if they don't have the financial wiggle room to take a break from work? So as in finance is a concern. So if somebody comes up and says, I'm really burnt out, I need to take breaks, something needs to change, but my work, the finance, I can't change the situation. Maybe we'll start with Asha. Like, what would you say to someone coming in with financial limitations?
I think with someone who's experiencing financial situation, okay, I just want to understand this correctly. Is it like they are financially challenged to get the service for themselves, or is it like they can't quit the job or leave the job because they are...
So I get the sense here it is unable to take breaks, which I assume would mean no pay or so on and so forth, or it would lead to a reduced pay. So that means stopping the work or reducing the work is not an option.
Okay, as we discussed earlier, I think at that point of minute point of time, I think it's good to, implement that breathing technique. Just breathe and, calm yourself down, all right? And then expose yourself to water. But after, when we feel a bit okay, I think it's important to acknowledge. So yeah, journaling, it's actually very helpful. The reason being is, at least okay, something has happened to me today, and then we will know, okay, what was the reason about it and how we reacted or responded to it. And then we can also think, okay, the next time, how we can respond better. So one of the things is definitely journaling, all right? And if we think that, what, I'm tired, I don't want to write anything, it's more exhausting. So, okay, why not just speak about it? All right, try to have someone that you can call to or talk to, that you can just share like something, because I'm very sure all of us, sometimes we just want to say it out instead of wanting our issue to be fixed, because I think we know one way or another the solution to it. So it's important, at least we just let it out from our chest. All right. And if possible, try to just space out for like, okay, of course, if we can't afford to take the whole day off or half day off, at least during your break time, your lunch time, space out from that place, go for a walk or go, I mean, if there is anything that makes you to feel at ease, all right? I mean, if you want to bring a soft toy, you know, one of this, I've actually encouraged my client to bring soft toy, all right? I mean, you don't have to show, just go to somewhere private. It's just you and your soft toy. Just be with your soft toy or anything that makes you to feel comfortable. Some people, it can be soft toys. Some people who are spiritual, they will have their spiritual tools with them, all right? I'm not saying that will all this, if anyone going to ask me, will all this solve my burnout problem? Well, the answer is no, for sure. Let's be honest. But at least it can minimize the damage. And later part, you will know how to deal with whatever that you're going through. At least you will have a bit of calmness in us. Yeah.
Right. So from the question that we got, I think a little bit of clarification is yes, if it's someone who is in a low or middle income and cannot afford to reduce their income or take those breaks. So what I'm hearing you say is we need to be mindful of, even if we can't stop the burnout or we can't take those breaks, what we do need to do is find an outlet so that all of that is not so pent up, whether that's finding a friend to talk to, releasing that stress. And of course, like you said, realistically, it may not fully solve the problem. And I understand to come up with those solutions, usually you need bigger support. But I really like your line, which was, if we don't talk about it, if we don't verbalize it, acknowledge it, then we don't know even where to begin managing the symptoms that we're facing. So, okay, yeah, that's very helpful. Nelissa, is there anything you'd like to hop on and add to that before we go to the next question? By the way, Q&A is open. So if you have questions, please drop them in.
Okay, so I second what Asha said, and I really like her suggestion to, bring in the soft toy view or anything that calms you down. If you don't have any, wiggle room to take a long break or long leave from your work. And I would like to add a suggestion that I tried during my burnout phase, was that to schedule something that differs from my routine. Like, for example, if you're doing audit or working as studying, I would, the last time, I scheduled for baking classes and pottery classes and bowling, and I've never tried any of that before. So scheduling these things into my routine just helps me to, take a step back from what I was facing. So I found that very helpful because when I had the burnout, I had a very routine life, work, studying, taking tests, things like that. So when I actually scheduled, and for a day or for a few hours, I was, bowling or baking and doing things out of the norm, I found that it really helps to get out of that mindset where it's so focused. Hey, I'm experiencing burnout. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to get out of bed. Yeah, it was very helpful.
Right. That's really interesting. Breaking that monotony and the routine. I guess, even if the person cannot, as Asha said, during the break, take the full break. But if you can't stop the work, then at least, even if there's weekends or after time, is there any way at all to break the monotony, do something different so that you don't get trapped in the pattern that normally comes with burnout? All right. Thanks for those points. Okay. So moving on, there's also another question. So this question is pretty long, but summarizing it, this person is saying that burnout is very common, and sometimes people, for example, boys or young men, may tend to escape by either playing video games or pleasure seeking. So the essence of this question is it okay to escape burnout by going down the pleasure seeking route? So that means playing games, getting your dopamine hit. Is that acceptable? I think is the question.
Okay, all right, fine. So I think my insights to that question will be, all right, if one is into this video games or, okay, when you talk about pleasure seeking, if anything that's healthy, that makes you to feel genuinely happy and peaceful, God bless you, go ahead. But then I think it's the other way around. All right, so anything anything that's unpleasant, that's unhealthy, that's addictive, I think rather than one say, I think you're addicted to this, that, rather than we say that, why not we ask ourselves, okay, maybe I need to ask myself, okay, what makes me to be addicted to this game? or what makes me to watch or to use anything unpleasant and that's not very healthy for me. All right, because I know that this might divert a bit from our topic, because when it comes to addiction, it's always about filling in the void and whatever that we are missing. So perhaps we can check on that. Okay, is there any void in me, or am I yearning or seeking for anything that makes me to do this? All right, I'm generally saying it. Well, if it's my client, I would definitely would like to go deeper, but then generally say, let's figure out what we might be missing or yearning, or what is the void that we are trying to fill in. So instead of I'm telling you to completely stop doing all that, okay, why not we minimize little by little, and you substitute it with something that's healthier, that makes you to feel better and good about yourself. All right, because I'm very sure that anyone who's addicted with any kind of behavior, they are just doing it because it's either to fill in the void. But trust me, I don't think so anyone is happy doing anything unhealthy, because that is actually one ticket to start disliking yourself. All right, to start hating and being negative about yourself. All right, so I know that I diverted a bit, but then just generally sharing my insights on that. Yeah.
Right, right. So if I'm hearing you right, Asha, it's being mindful that when we are burnt out, there can be a void. And before we follow or like try and fill up whatever it is without even knowing what it is, it's helpful to kind of take a step back and go, what is this void? What is it that I need? What is it that will be helpful? Before we try to immediately gratify what that void is. So in a way, it's kind of figuring out exactly what is the problem, what do we need, before running for an immediate solution. Yeah, I guess that could be helpful, taking a quick pause to go, okay, what does the void say to me, and what does it really need? Speaking of these areas, and taking care of ourselves, paying attention to things, there is a question here coming in that says, and I'd love to hear, Nelissa, your thoughts. So this person is saying, I struggle a lot with allowing myself to have rest when I was burnt out. And even when they were resting, they were mentally exhausted by the guilt of not doing anything. How do we overcome that guilt? Like, what do you think? Did you experience that? Or can you connect with this question?
To that anonymous attendee, I really, really relate to what you're going through. So basically, just to share a little bit, there was this one time when I had experienced the burnout, where during my master's undertaking, we had to submit a thesis, right? And it was a crucial period where I had to, it's nearing the deadline and everything. So all of the time, it's either work or it's finishing up my thesis. But then sometimes I just feel like, I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't care less, even though I know that I have to complete my thesis to complete my master's, kan. So the guilt is there, and I can totally relate to what the attendee is saying. But then I would strongly advise that to imagine yourself as if you're a firefighter. Okay, so if you're a firefighter, you go to a scene where there's fire and you need to put out the fire. Without the proper tools, you cannot do anything, even though you're a firefighter. You need to have the hose and the fire truck and whatever that comes with the life-saving tools lah. So you need to actually take care of yourself first before you can take care of other parts in your life. Even though I know that that's easier said than done. However, like the example earlier, start small, bit by bit, by making a list, by having non-negotiables, by having restrictions. Work time is work time, social time is social time. So yeah, don't feel guilty for taking rest, because you actually need to do that. Even if for example, your phone, right? You need to charge it. You cannot just use your phone until forever. So yeah, even phones need that. So you don't have to feel guilty for not doing anything, for taking rest and things like that.
Right. I think that's a pretty funny and ironic example, because we're talking about burnout and you're talking about firefighters. If you don't let the firefighter do their job, you will burn. So I don't know if that was intentional, but it's pretty pretty nicely put. And you know what we're talking today, the suggestions from Asha and so on, those are making sure that as firefighters we are actually using the hose, and sometimes using that hose means resting, breaking the schedule, learning how to spend the time breathing, and as Asha said, taking the time to just rest because you need the rest. So that mentality of I am the firefighter for myself, I need to use this tool, the rest is this. Feeling the guilt adds to the flame. Right now, I need to focus on the hose. Okay. Yeah, maybe we should have a fireman themed webinar on burnout. Anyway, before I carry on with my thoughts, taking a look through our questions, we do have a question that's maybe a bit specific. I do think this would go to Asha. It's talking about a teacher dealing with students who get easily burnt out. With a caveat, this person is also diagnosed with, I think, autism spectrum disorder, ASD. So I guess this is someone who is prone to being overstrained, if I'm reading the situation right. And he's also a student, so this is a teacher. So maybe if you could help us break it down. So as a teacher, how can we reduce chances of burnout? And also speaking to someone with a mental or a developmental diagnosis, if possible. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, being a teacher myself, all right, I also have students who are, under this spectrum. So I understand. I think I can relate to the stress that the teacher might be facing. Well, to begin with, trust me, sometimes, I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes more than the students, the expectations from the other parties are actually overwhelming to us as teachers. All right. So the best thing that the teacher can do is, I think the first thing that we can do, because every student, even though they might be under spectrum also, each students, they are all different. All right. Like I believe all of us, even if we are students, we all are different, right? So it's good to understand that, the strength of that child, and then try to improve on it, work on it, all right, understand the child as an individual. And then it's very important to always actually, to kids with special needs, all right, they get they get excited. They like when you say something nice about them, something good about them, which is, of course, the truth. Like, for example, hey, you're good at this, keep up the good work, all right? And it's okay if you're not good with this, perhaps, we can just keep improving. Now, trust me, you need patience higher than Mount Everest for some students, all right? So I think the teacher shouldn't take the whole responsibilities on herself. Whatever that she can provide, yes, she needs to provide. And I think it's good to highlight to the other educators or the parents or the management what they can do and contribute for the betterment of the child, all right? Because she's not the one person who is running, right? Okay, if Nell could give the firefighter example, I think, let me talk about an airplane. You don't need a pilot alone. You still need the air hostess and everything. Everyone needs to play the role, right? So in the child's life, everyone needs to play the role. So yeah, acknowledge the child. All right, let's see, okay, what is stressing the child? Let's don't add to it, but what makes the child to feel better. And for the teacher, it's very important not to take everything on your own. If it's too overwhelming for you, my dear, speak out, say it out. Please let them know what you are capable to do and what you would like to do to help the child. Beyond that, you can just let them know this is what they can contribute. All right, so this is my insights, because this is something that I have done. All right, so I'm sharing my insights with the teacher. Yeah.
Right. Very specific question, very specific answers, somehow still applicable to all of us. So a couple of things, if I can summarize that. Number one is, of course, understanding that we are very good at inflating our self-expectations and the expectations of our role, and making sure that we do connect with others and reach out and adjust how much weight we're putting on ourselves. And of course, the other interesting thing is to see the student as an individual. I do believe many of us can fall into the trap of seeing someone with a diagnosis or neurodevelopmental disorder and then saying, what do all people in such group need? But as you pointed out, there are different strengths with every student. How can we do work along that line to reduce maybe the odds of burnout, perhaps? All right, and thank you for that question. Thank you for your answers. Now let me take a look at our list here. Okay, if you are thinking of a question, have some sudden inspiration to ask, please do drop your questions either on Facebook Live or here. Okay, give me a second. All right, there's a question here by Russell Vince. Russell, if you don't mind adding some more information to your question, I'll try and interpret it. Once your update comes in, we'll add more. I think this question, so what it says here is how to overcome people's thoughts about people going to seek counseling. I get the sense this question is about the stigma of going to counseling and getting help. How not everybody thinks that going to counseling is okay or acceptable. Maybe Nelissa, if you have any experience seeking help, or if you have any friends who have sought help, how would you help them reduce that stigma?
Okay, so basically, even though I've never experienced going to counseling myself in terms of work or anything, however, I feel that it's scary. It's a scary step to open up to stranger, and it's kind of difficult. Hence, that's why so many people have stigma around it. And some people also have the stigma that if you go to counseling, then something is wrong with you. That's one of the most common stigma as well. However, after being involved with the Reframe Project and everything, I don't think that going to counseling is something we should be afraid of, or something that we should, just use counseling as a tool to help us. So I would say that counseling would act like a session where it helps you open up to other people as well.
Right. So thinking of it as a way to open up and something
Instead
that
of
is
treating something that you're dealing with, treat it as a way that it helps you open up to other people first.
right. It's very funny when you say that, because then I realize that it's also we've already formed an impression that something is wrong with us, and therefore seeing the counselor confirms something is wrong with us. How can we take it from the perspective of I'm going to see a counselor because I think I'm struggling with something and I want to be able to open up about that. Yeah, it's a pretty sneaky way to tai chi the perspective. Okay, and Asha, what about yourself? I guess you must see this in variety of ways in your experience.
All right. Yes, I do agree with Nell, because most people thinking that meeting a counselor means you have a problem. All right. And sometimes they also think that meeting a counselor means, they're going to fix our problem. All right. Well, it's more like this. All right. How I would define counseling is someone who is seeking support and help in order to explore about themselves, in order to heal themselves, in order to find something meaningful about themselves. That's how I see it. All right. So, yeah, okay. Chicken, let's take an example. All right. Sometimes people are also concerned about with whom I'm talking. Will the person keep my secret, or is this person reliable, trustable? So thinking like this, okay, chicken, you have like McDonald's and KFC, whatsoever, mama shop. So somehow you need to test the water, you need to test and see which one works for you, right? Because some people have the mentality, you know what, I don't want you to deal with my emotion, just fix my problem and then I'm going to be fine. To some, okay, I need to know what's exactly not right with me. I want to go in depth and figure out what it's my issue and I want to solve this. So try to, if you are seeking for counseling help, it's also important, I think, to the people, the clients, right? If you're concerned about who's going to be a therapist, then check on the websites. If you're talking about the Lembaga counselor, you can find the details of the counselors, all right? Or if you're referring to any other organization, I'm sure they have their counselor's portfolio. So please read and try to see, okay, this person would suit my issue or my case, and then just give it a try, give it a go. So not necessarily you have to go there with a problem and hoping that they fix you, because I always tell my clients that you're not the toilet or an object and I'm the plumber to fix you. I'm here to hear you out and we're going to discuss things together. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about this.
Right. So I like the way you really phrase it. So of course there's the chicken, which I think most people universally like. I think Malaysia eats a lot of chicken. So that's a wonderful example. Um, and also the idea of course, figuring out which chicken, fried chicken, boiled chicken works best for you. But I also really appreciate how you phrase it as seeking help is you actively doing something for yourself. It is not surrendering to someone else's suggestions. It's you actively doing something because you want to work on what you have to deal with. So it's very empowering. I like that phrasing. I'm going to be inspired by it the next time somebody asks me, how do I explain that? Okay, so let's take a look at the rest of our questions. Once again, if you have a question, please leave it with us either in the group or in the chat, sorry, the Q&A or on the Facebook Live. So there is a question which I think is quite amusing. It asks, how do we differentiate between burnout and a midlife crisis? I think this is pretty fascinating. We don't hear so often about the midlife crisis these days because there's so many other crises. Anyway, so maybe tell us a bit more. We start with Asha, I guess. So someone in a midlife crisis, what would you typically say a midlife crisis is perhaps? And how can that be different or maybe even include burnout?
All right. I think I like the last part that you said that it might include burnout. All right. Yeah, it's a might. It's not a necessary. So to my understanding, midlife crisis is more like, okay, maybe a person is in search of a new job or new career. Maybe they invested their 10 years of life doing this particular job, but now they feel that their interest is something else. So it could be a job, or it could be about relationship, or be it family or friends or their partners. All right, it could be the change of interest. It could also be in regards of health, like you see our body gives lots of signals. So one way or another it may just tell, hey honey, you're aging, better take care of yourself. So imagine someone is experiencing health issues unexpectedly. All right, so these are, I would say, I would define as midlife crisis, an episode or a chapter in your life that one way or another it's going to take place. It's more like how we deal with it, because burnout, it's more to like we are emotionally exhausted and disconnected with whatever that we enjoy doing, like doing. But midlife crisis is more like something that, yes, it's going to take place. Yes, it can be stressful one way or another. If we are not dealing with that, yes, it could include burnout, just like how you say it. All right. So I think I would see it in a two different frame. Midlife crisis is more like something that we all go through. It's more like human development from a baby, and then you become a toddler, and then you become teenager. So I would see it that way. Whereas burnout, it's more into the emotion part of it. Whether, I mean, it's going to be there if we allow that. It won't be there if we are able to deal with the crisis that we are experiencing.
Right. Yeah, so I'm hearing that when it comes to things like midlife crisis, it's a self-perception, it's an aspect of rediscovering our identity, maybe, or discovering what really aligns with the version of us now and how do we feel about it. It's an identity-driven thing. And I guess if you have all that exhaustion and whatnot, that can incorporate burnout. And of course, from our discussion, burnout is something that is quite attainable at various stages of life. Whereas the midlife crisis comes at the mid stage of life. It's an identity-oriented thing. Okay, so we have a new question coming in. So this person is concluding that each person handles stress differently. And for example, this person would prefer to staycation, not a big fan of journaling. They like to come back and start fresh. And the question is there a right way to deal with stress? Of course, earlier we did touch on this a little bit, which is acknowledging there could be the void, right? And that void leads you to running straight to fill it up with immediate gratification. So maybe, as we talked about earlier, one way that can be more difficult or can lead to other issues is to immediately want to fill the void with something that we're not sure why we like it. We just want to feel good. So that's one area. But yeah, Nelissa, like from your experience when you were going through it, did you feel like there was a right and wrong way to handle stress?
I would say there's a particular way to handle stress, at least from my side anyways.
Mm,
Like for example, to me, stress always need to be dealt in two ways. One is to deal with it head on. Second is to take care of yourself, or like the example from the attendee is to go on solo staycation, right? So one is to deal with it. Second, to uh, have to take rest, to recharge, and goes on vacation and things like that. So it's important to take the first and second step together, because regardless of how many self-care activities you do, how many staycations, if you don't deal with the stressor, it's going to affect you when you get back from your vacation. Uh, so yes, the first thing is to deal with the stressor head on. It might take several techniques or tools, time management, talking to someone, or getting help, formal help or anything. But then, yeah, there's always two ways to deal with stress.
right. I think that's pretty funny. Imagine taking a vacation and coming back, open your post box, and the stress has been delivered to your house. It's still there waiting for you. So for yourself and your personal experience, there are slightly more helpful ways, or like there are helpful ways that work for stress for you, which is of course having the breaks, having the recharge, but not forgetting that there is a root issue that's causing the stress that needs to be managed. And Asha, what about yourself? Besides speaking about looking for immediate gratification, are there any things that you think we need to be mindful of when we want to handle stress?
I think I would definitely agree with what Nell said, all right? Because yeah, like she said, no matter how many staycation or whatever that we are doing, I mean, the root issue is still there. But to the question that our friend asked earlier, if it's the right way to deal with stress, I think we will know whether is it right or not right, as long as, I mean, if you're doing something healthy and pleasant, it's fine, it's the right thing. Unhealthy things, of course, it's something unpleasant and not right thing to do. In the end of the day, if you still think, staycation or going out is helpful for you, go ahead. All right, just go ahead, get that done. But while we are experiencing those activities, all right, it's important for us to actually reflect and figure out on, something. Wherever you go, whatever that you do, it's going to reflect about whatever that we have experienced. I always believe that. All right. I can share with you this. I mean, my lecturer used to say this, change your playmates and your playgrounds. All right. Sometimes we get so stressed at certain place. That's the reason we are escaping ourselves. We want to go elsewhere. So like what Nell said, all right, you figure that out. Just go back to the root and make sure you figure out, because you do not want to enjoy and then you come back with the stressor. But if you think, as I go on my vacation, when I come back, I feel more fresh and I think I'm able to handle better, then it's fine. So again, it's individual, and as long as things are done and dealt healthily, then I think it's good to go. I would say that.
Right, got it. So it's also important for us to remember, as we take those breaks, we also take the time to, yes, as Nelissa said, to face those things. But while we're taking those breaks, what can be helpful is to reflect on what might be causing the issue, so that we don't tackle a surface thing. So that's very helpful. Okay, so we are wrapping up and running out of time in terms of our session. So just to end this part of the conversation the way that we normally do, if somebody right now is feeling burnt out after this webinar, what's one thing they can do? Or what's one thing you think they should do tonight after this webinar? Nelissa.
Okay, thanks, Ethan. I would say the key takeaway, one key takeaway from me is that to not to overcome feeling guilty for taking rest to deal with burnout. That's the most important. Besides that, I would say that incorporating self-care techniques in your daily life, that those two techniques were the most helpful for me.
Right. Focusing on the self-care in the day, and of course, addressing that guilt that tends to come with wanting to take a break. And Asha, what about yourself? What's one thing that can be done after this?
I think it's always important to acknowledge how we feel and what we think. And I
Mm,
guess if one thing I would like my audience to take back with them, I know I said a lot, but then if there's one thing I want all of you all to know, that you are important to yourself, all right? So please do not take yourself for granted. And if it's possible, at least once in a day, all right, I think it's important for you to self-affirm yourself. I'm not going to ask you to write, hey, you look lovely or beautiful or handsome today. It's not that. Even when you feel vulnerable, take the piece of paper or a voice record and say that, so and so, I understand you're vulnerable, and it's okay to cry about it, to be angry about it. That's what I also mean as self-affirmation and self-love. It's not only about you doing what you like, what you enjoy, but also
mm.
acknowledging the other part of you that sometimes we are so afraid to face. Yeah.
Right, right. So it's so important for us to make sure that, while we're doing all these things, that we also take the time to ensure we really take the time to with and acknowledge what we're going through. Now, of course, Nelissa, Asha, and to everyone here, you know, it's whenever we talk about topics like burnout, it's such a pervasive thing. It's something that's so common in all our lives, but it's something that we don't really always know that people need to talk about with experts and people with lived experience until we hear from them. So actually, guys, those of you who've attended, we only know that we need to talk about these topics when we receive your thoughts and feedback. So as we continue on to tonight, we would really love it if we could know from you what you think is important for us to talk about next. And to do that, of course, could you please share with us your thoughts in this feedback form? So, Daryl, can we get this screen? So, if we could, to make sure we get Nelissa in for the next topic, to get Asha in for the right topics, to get the next mysterious speaker in, we know what you need to hear. So if you can scan this QR code, we really need your feedback so we can continue giving you what you need. So please scan this QR code and give us your thoughts. We'll play some soothing music so you can mentally imagine that green scenario as you fill in this feedback form. So Daryl, can you hit the notes for us? Let's take about a minute to do this. If you prefer to fill up via, your desktop or your laptop, you can see that in the chat, the link is there. I see the link for the feedback form that was sent doesn't work. Can I get someone to re-upload the link in the chat? If you can't access that link, the QR code is still accessible. Okay, this updated link seems to work. Thank you, 𝗲𝗍, for those of you who don't know. 𝗲𝗍 is a part of our team. She is a clinical psychologist as well. And she has been facilitating our chat. So thank you, 𝗲𝗍, for doing this for us. So Hartini, I see you're having difficulty entering. I believe difficulty, the feedback form, the latest link should be working. right, now, of course, keeping in touch with us, we saw that little video cliffhanger at the start. If you'd like to, please do keep in touch with us. Let us know what your interests are, respond to our content. You can keep in touch with us on our website, or of course, follow us on Instagram. If you're going to doom scroll, at least once in a while, you wind up on a friendly TRP face, Reframe Project face. I think that breaks the monotony of social media. So if you could follow us there, that would be great. We'd love to keep in touch. I think this brings our webinar to a close. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you, Nelissa. Thank you, Asha. Could you please give a quick wave and say your final words to the people as we close up tonight?
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for attending to us.
All right. Thanks, Nelissa. Thanks, Asha. We've had a wonderful
you.
panel. Burnout is a challenge of our times. As we said earlier today, acknowledge the situation. Start to think of the first few steps you can do to ease yourself. What are your negotiables? And of course, the acknowledging and speaking about it. And even being here is a way for us to get started. So thank you everyone for joining us. We hope to see you next time. Take care for all of you across Malaysia, whether you are in East, West, or even out of. Have a good night. Enjoy your Saturday and work on the burnout on Sunday. Good night, everyone.